I just want to kind of wrap up the work that we've done on the GLK. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of my coffee here. Okay, so the work we did was we had to replace the thermostat, and over the course of making the video, which was roughly about 3 hours of footage, and if you kind of go back to what I was saying about making it, it takes a lot to make a video, even if it's a crappy video. But the course of making the video spanned about 3 hours. Okay, but had I just done this work, it would have maybe taken me a little over 45 minutes to an hour to pull the lower dust covers, pull out the radiator drain plug, come back up top, disassemble the air box, the air intake hoses, which would expose the serpentine belt that would have come off. Then what else did we have to do? Again, we did not have to remove the air pump, nor did the air box need to come off. I just figured it would provide a little bit more or provide more opportunity to actually see the work. So the air box does not need to come off, but we took it off. Again, the secondary air pump does not need to come off. We just gave it a little bit of a lift, and we were able to get our extension and socket in there. There's only 2 bolts that hold in the thermostat. Those came out. Had to just give a little pry just to get it unseated. Old thermostat comes out, new thermostat goes in, reverse the process, 2 bolts, serpentine belt. Again, the air box and the air hoses didn't need to come off, so you really shouldn't fool with that. Go back underneath. You can, well, actually, you want to do that last. You want to put your dust covers on at the last minute. Make sure that you don't have any leaks. You're making sure that you don't have any leaks at the thermostat. We go in, fill the coolant reservoir to as much as it'll take. Then start the car, let it get up to operating temperature. It'll start to circulate itself, and it's bleeding itself. It's pushing the air that entered the engine block out with the new. Okay, the level will drop, continue to add a little bit more. Then once the temperature gauge starts to move above the 40, then it's okay to turn your heating system on, both sides, fully hot, the blower at its maximum, and then we can just nudge along the coolant system flow with a little bit of acceleration. All right, that'll assist the coolant to start flowing. The water pump will start spinning a little bit faster, which will knock more air out of the system. Again, the coolant level will drop again, add a little bit more coolant. Then you should start feeling the fluctuation of the heat coming in. So again, we got to get rid of those air pockets. If you don't get rid of the air pockets, the engine can still run hot and you will not get heat inside. The indicator that you are successfully bleeding the system correctly is when you have that smooth and steady flow of heat inside. Then you're taking note on the coolant level. Once you can't feel it anymore, you're done. Cap goes on. Again, you should have a check engine light associated with it. So if you don't have a scan tool, I won't say the name, but I think even if you've never worked on a vehicle, I think most people are familiar with the auto stores, okay? And between the main 3, I believe they all will do a check. Now, they're not supposed to clear anything, but we'll just leave that to imagination. Okay. So if you don't have a scan tool, there's the possibility of still getting your code cleared. All right. If you do have the scan tool, then you at least want to make sure and go in if you have the capability of seeing, and you should, because that's a pretty basic feature. I think even with a decent $50 or $60 scan tool. So you should be able to see the engine coolant temperature. You just want to make sure that that's matching your temperature gauge. Again, making sure that it's not fluctuating. And if you have the opportunity, I'm not trying to come off copy you, but I'm pretty confident in the work that I've done. So I'm going to forego the test drive. But you should at least, stay within your neighborhood in the event that it does run or begin to run hot. And just a little quick tip, if you don't know, if you get into a situation where it kind of starts to run a little bit hot, again, turn your heater on full blast with, again, the blower. So, I'm sorry, maximum temperature and full blast on the blower. Again, the theory is it should open the thermostat and send the coolant throughout the entire circulation system, so it will take longer to come back. Thus, it'll kind of regulate or help regulate the temperature from running just red hot. Then get back home, and then you've got to figure out, okay, well, my coolant level dropped, so I don't think I've got the right amount of coolant, or it could still be air, and so just go back through a bleeding process. I am going to finish, because I didn't put the dust covers back on. Again, this is day 2. I didn't finish this, the initial recording. I didn't finish till sometime after midnight. So I'm just going to put the dust covers back on. I pretty much got, the top of the engine, it's back together. So I need to get this off the ramp. The issue with this car is thermostat has gone bad. I could walk through the diagnosis. And again, in talking to our quote unquote novice individuals, one of the most important things in making the attempt to do your own repairs, it's diagnosis. And again, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole because again, we could debate and argue. But the fact of the matter is, what's not arguable, what's not up for debate, is guessing, right? And what I mean by that is, you have to have at least some level of understanding, one, of how an engine works, which is nothing more than just an air pump, but it's a very sophisticated air pump at this point. We are beyond the days where, in 1970 or 80s, we could, pull off a carburetor and rebuild it. There's no more in many aspects. Let's just keep it superficial or high level. There's no more pulling parts and rebuilding them or repairing them. A part is bad, you buy the part, you replace the part, okay? But how do you know what to replace? When your check engine light comes on and you don't have a scan tool, or what you have available isn't sophisticated enough and you don't necessarily know how to start going down the process of understanding what the scan tool is telling you. Because in many instances, unless you have a dealer specific tool, which is very expensive and in general not available to public, if at all, the codes that you're getting, they're general codes. In some instances, they can be specific. I could kind of say, like in this application, which is why I'm not going to do it. But I could hook up my scan tool and show you the code that's coming back. It is specific to the thermostat. So So the point there is I already know what to repair. But there could be some instances, and in a lot of cases, in a lot of instances, where you'll get codes and it's generic, okay? And you have to understand the thought process of diagnosing so that in the grand scheme of things, you're not guessing, because what you don't want to do, and it's the point I'm getting at, is guessing and you're throwing money at parts and it doesn't solve your problem, okay? So what we're doing here is we're changing the thermostat. I'm going to also give the caveat now that for those who are a little bit more knowledgeable, what you're going to see me doing when it comes time to replacing the antifreeze, because we're going for the novice, when you pull the thermostat, we're going to lose some coolant, okay? And what I don't think even about 8 or 9 months ago, I had to replace the radiator on this vehicle. And so in that instant, all the coolant was drained out and I put new coolant in. So what I'm not going to flush the coolant system because it's already been done. All right. I'm going to replace what I lose. And we'll just go from there. All right, let's bring you over to the car and let's start taking some stuff apart. Let me angle this down. Okay, that should be good enough. Because again, right now we're not doing anything major. And I want you to understand that some of the stuff that I'm doing more than likely does not have to be done as a requirement for this repair. I'm only doing it for the purpose of making sure that we have the best visual shot to make the repair, I guess, more understandable, if you will. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's remove our little air ducts. Be pretty careful. More than likely, if you've not replaced yours are probably disintegrating to begin with. I'm not going to start, going down the road of bashing a manufacturer, but I truly do not understand why they use this somewhat of a paper element with, questionable adhesive in a very hot engine area. But if yours are not destroyed, please be careful about detaching your intake hoses from the airbox. All right, so I take a hold of the plastic, just kind of work it back and forth, and it'll come off. I'm gonna go grab a pick. Okay, let's take a pick, and what I'm picking is, if you can see here, I'm just raising this part just to get over that little here we go, this little retention portion. One air hose, and I'll make little comments here and there, but one thing I'm just thinking of is safety. Okay, you said I don't have any, even though I'm not running the engine at all, safety first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my watch off. This also gives me the ability to have more clearance. If, again, I could be working on something completely different. If I need to get my hand down there, can't do that with my watch on. So, but more, it's safety. Just remove anything that can potentially get you hung up. All right, let's keep moving on. Other side, same deal. Pick. All right, here's another hose. I'm going to go ahead and remove our little rubber barrier, okay? The box itself, all right, it's essentially kind of held in place with some rubber grommets and some metal kind of C sort of clips. But this front part, it's just kind of snapped down in there. So if you just kind of put your fingers here, thumbs on the air box, raise up, that comes off. Okay, and set this to the side. On the back end, at this point now, actually, where's my hose? So you do have a hose that runs from the air box to the air pump. Okay, so I've taken that off. You don't necessarily have to remove the hose itself. It can stay attached to the air box, but again, it came off in one piece, so it's no problem. Took that hose off. Okay, now at this point you have a retention clip back here that you would just push back. Okay, let's keep that in the frame, and then we can just pop up our air box. Does this have to be removed? Absolutely not. Again, I'm making my best attempt to make as visual as possible for the thermostat. All right, so we can set this apart. But just as a general note, you can use this time as an opportunity to look at other things. Okay, as you can see, you can actually see in your air box. Well, check your filters out. All right, if you can see that there's tons of debris, and one, you know you haven't changed your air filters in a while, now's the time to do it. It's very simple. Once you get this off, you've got one, 2, 3, 4, I think there's 5, so no, there's 4, but there's just 4 little screws. They stay in place. You just undo it, this comes off, take the old air filter out, dump out your debris, put your new air filter in, and you're done. Okay, so but we're not talking about air filters. Okay, now we've got some, or good, well, let me not say good deal, but we've got some more exposure, and that's kind of the point here. So let's point out where we're actually working. Let me because I've got this new light, and again, we're not doing product review, but I just got this headlight, so let me see how well it works. There we go, and shedding more light on this situation. Sorry, I didn't mean to blind you. I think it might be better to take this out of the tripod for a second. Okay, so where are we working? We are working, actually it's better if I film. Okay, we are working right here. Okay, so this is your thermostat. All right, so what do we have to remove just on a basic preliminary visual? We've got to remove this hose. Okay, so we've got a there we go. We've got a retaining clip there. Okay, so we're going to undo that. Chances are this air pump is in the way because we've got, there we go. Can you see that? We have a little small bolt there, probably one underneath. Could I possibly get to that bolt? Possibly. So I'll make the decision as we continue. But what else do we have to do? Chances are our serpentine belt is in the way. Because if you can see, if I can get it on there, okay, there's part of the thermostat down there, okay? And if you can see it, the belt is just in the way. Could I possibly, finagle it up? Well, more than likely, maybe. But again, I'm trying to make the video from the perspective of making it, again, you know, the visual of it. So as I go through the repair, if it's determined, well, okay, well, no, you don't need to remove the belt, then don't remove the belt, okay? So, however, here's another instant into, you know, again, when I say look at other stuff, all right? So as it turns out, and I had actually noticed remnants before, but I just didn't pay close enough attention. However, here's what I'm getting at. And I actually put this back in, so this isn't how I discovered it. But you can see down there, okay, that serpentine belt. It's shredding, okay? And you can see, well, I'm not sure if you can see, but that shouldn't look like that. You shouldn't see the threads. You can actually see, though, very vividly here that the belt is actually not covering part of the pulley. So for whatever reason, the belt is starting to shred. So this is the time, or let me put it this way, and I'm going to turn. Okay, don't get so focused on. I put myself. I'm turning this light off. Okay. Actually, one cool thing about this, the light is on, but I can just do this. Boom. There we go. Okay. Sorry. That was pretty cool for me. Point being, when you're doing any repair, if you have the opportunity to look at other stuff, that's a good time. Don't just get so focused on getting your repair done. Pay attention to as much as you possibly can. So that's just kind of one of the practices that I have personally. If something goes wrong and I have to get into, you know, the portion of, again, diagnosing, well, what else do I see? Okay. Do I have oil leaks? Which I do. In fact, I'm very particular even about keeping engine bays clean. Not because I'm OCD, I am, but having a clean engine helps you see when you have problems. What do I mean by that? Let me go back to the light. Let me see if well, you can see right here, okay? That's dirty. Well, it's not dirty for a reason, okay? So somewhere along the line, I've got some oil leaking somewhere, which is kind of strange to me because I just changed the oil on this, and from that oil change, I had an accurate dipstick level. But that's neither here nor there. And again, we're not talking about you know, oil leaks and so forth and so on. My point is, look for other stuff. Let's turn the light off. Don't get so focused on the repair. Let's try to find out, you know, other potential problems, and you can still fix your problem. Or you actually may find out that you know what, I can't do this repair because it coincides with another problem. And if I do this, well, it's still not going to be fixed because I've got, you know, kind of something that's in conjunction, if that makes sense. Or, you know, okay, well, this has nothing to do with this. I need to repair that. I'll add that to a list, and I'll get to it when I get to it. All right, let's move on. So at this point, we are going to, or we have at least identified that maybe the air pump may have to come off. This hose definitely has to come off, and chances are the serpentine belt has to come off. Let me give you another clue on the serpentine belt. In many instances, most vehicles will have a diagram somewhere, either, you know, on the front cowling here, or maybe up on somewhere on your bonnet or your hood, of the routing of the serpentine belt. Even if it does have it, for whatever reason, I just have a desire to grab a piece of paper and a pen and draw my own little diagram. So if you have it, but it is, if you don't have it, okay, again, as a novice, it is highly recommended to go ahead and draw a diagram of how the belt routes so that you're not confused, okay? When we get to the point we've got to take it off, obviously I will show that. I'm going to show as much work as I possibly can. All right, so what I'm going to do now is get myself in the frame. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go underneath the car. So I'm going to take a pause here, kind of get myself situated on how I can best angle the camera so that you can see what I'm doing. But the gist of it is I'm going underneath to remove the dust cover, to expose the bottom of the radiator, because that's where the drain plug is. I'm going to drain as much coolant that comes out, and then we'll come back to the top and just remove what we think we need to remove so that we can get thermostat out. All right. All right. Taking a pause. Okay, so I am on the ground and I am at the front of the vehicle, and I am positioned on the passenger side of the vehicle. However, here's what needs to come off. Okay, you've got a front dust cover, and then you, for all intent and purpose, let's say you have a rear. Okay, and if I can, okay, so you can see that here is the kind of the demarcation or the separation between the two. So we're going to remove, here we go. We're going to remove here and here, okay? And this cover is the cover you remove if you're doing an oil change. And good Lord. Another telltale sign to confirm we definitely have some kind of a leak, right? I'm kind of hoping that maybe it is coming from the thermostat, but let's see. Let us see. Let us see. Nope. I'm smelling it. It's, even though, you know, coolant does kind of have a slippery or an oil-like feeling. For me, as far as I can see right now, this is definitely oil. So, well, we have another issue to address, and maybe that's another video. But again, we're not addressing an oil leak right now. But it is a confirmation of what I showed you up top. So, again, this cover is the cover you remove for an oil change. It'll expose the oil pan. This cover is covering the radiator. So we're going to be removing all of the screws up front here. And I'm not going to bore you with how to remove some screws. Whether you've worked on a car or not, I think this is pretty basic for you to understand how to, or you should have at least the ability to remove a screw. So again, we're going to, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get this this cover off, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so we have our little screws. As you can see, we've got our screws out. Again, rule of thumb is, you know, try to work as neatly as you possibly can. You know, in some instances, you have the opportunity to put, you know, bolts or screws back in the holes that they came from. In this instance, that's not quite the case. But again, you know, I've got my screws in a nice little neat pile there, you know, off to the side where they can't, you know, be kicked or, you know, accidentally knocked and then scattered into an abyss of a pile. But again, you can see that we've got the screws out. I only I undid the 3 screws, you know, to separate the rear from the front. And now this is loose, so we can just take that out. All right, we're gonna set this to the side. Forgive the one-handedness, but again, I may not have a good orientation here, but again, I am at the front of the vehicle, and oh, good Lord. It's on the side. That's right. Sorry about that. I just had to remember where our drain plug is. So this is the drain plug for the radiator. And this will give us the best opportunity to make the least amount of a mess as possible. Because again, we're going to lose some coolant from the top. Actually, that may not necessarily be true. For wherever the fluid is up top, draining it here may give us, or it may drop it just below the thermostat. So, but that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, we're draining some coolant. This is where you do it. Okay. So let me position or get the catch pan, and I'll show you pulling the plug. All right. Taking a pause. Alrighty, and the theme of safety, as you can see, I've put on some protective eyewear. But I'm going to flip the camera around, and we'll go back to that drain plug. Now, I will admit that I've actually forgotten how the plug, or let me rephrase. I've forgotten whether the plug needs to come out or if you just simply turn it. I think that's the case. You just turn it, and then the turning will line up with the drain hole. So I don't think you actually have to pull the plug out. But the plug can come out. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pull it out. So, okay, so I am back, and I am mistaken. I am remembering wrong. On some vehicles where you do have a plug like this, or let's just call it a drain plug, you actually have some that are, color coded. They could be green. I've seen them orange. I've seen them where they're actually, butterflied. And then you would have, somewhat of a drain hole. Again, it's very small. It's nothing humongous, but that would at least get, the draining process started. On this one, the plug actually does come out. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go up top. Well, let's just do this now. Let's go up top. Let's undo our reservoir cap. Okay. What are we doing here? Let's use this water bottle, for instance. If we poured water out, it could potentially glug, glug, glug. But if we put a hole somewhere in here, it would flow out smoothly. Okay. So that's what we're doing here. Remove the radiator cap. We'll go back down. We'll go back down, remove the drain plug, and then it's going to arc out. So we've got to position that catch pan to catch as much, coolant as we possibly can, so that we don't have a mess on the floor. Let me see if I can do this one-handed. I should actually have some gloves on, some nitrile rubber gloves. I ran out of them. So I'm just going to pull this. Let me put my safety glasses back on so we don't get any splatter in our eyes. Because chances are what should happen is, again, it should come arcing out. All right, so let's see what happens here. I think I've got it just enough to where I can do this by hand. Okay, so as you can see, we've got some coolant draining. And as you can see, we still made somewhat of a mess. So what you want to do to avoid this is um, when I told you that it would arc out. So considering we removed the cap up top, as I pulled the plug, the arc went all the way this way. So you want to have your catch pan, past your wheel. And you can see the size of my catch pan. And then I think after about 1 or 2 seconds, it immediately starts to come back. So you want to stay with your catch pan until it starts, or that flow starts to come back to where it's about, to where it's the arc of the fluid is. So essentially, stay with your catch pan as it starts to come back. Move your catch pan back, and then here you go. Now, how do you get the plug out? All right, we're back. Okay, so here's what I want to point out on the drain plug itself. So as I mentioned, it's held in place with the tab 12 to 6. Okay, to get it out, you're turning it. What's that? 3 to 9. All right. Okay, and what you're doing is, as you can see, I'm probably too close, but on the drain plug itself, see how it kind of starts to incline there, so it locks it, unlocks it. All right, so again, 12 and 6, 3 and 9, pull it out, the fluid starts to arc, get it beyond the wheel. You probably will not have much of a mess like I have. I've got some shop towels down there soaking up what fell on the concrete. But again, stay with the catch pan, bring it back as the arc starts to, come back closer to the car. And then you've got at least a good deal of the upper. There's still plenty of coolant in the engine. And then, like I said, it's probably gotten low enough below the thermostat level to where when we pull the thermostat, some coolant should trickle out, or we may get a lot. We'll find out when we actually pull it. So we've gotten that portion out of the way. So let me get myself situated. I'm going to pause here and let me study that air pump. And again, definitely the serpentine belt is coming off, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, I'll be back. Alrighty, looks like I'm going to be forced to do some one-handed, camera and tool in the other hand, just by the sheer nature of, how the part is situated. But what I'm going to do, because I promised that I was going to try to share as much of the work as possible. So with the thermostat and then other, certain parts on the vehicle, you have, as you can see, this clip here. Okay, now you can go ahead and take the clip out, but just so you understand, the clip is designed to stay in place. Okay, you've got this L here, and I'm not sure if I can capture it. Come on, focus up. Will the black help it focus? But I can't necessarily, but if you actually look, you'll see that there's a I'm just gonna refer to it as a bit of a detent, but it's designed to stop, or let's just call it a stop point, where, come on, focus, there we go, where this L portion of the retaining clip will stop. Okay, like I said, you can take this out. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult to get it back in. So point being, let's see if I can undo this with my pry tool. Okay, if I can do it with one hand, it's probably going to work better with a flat head. So let's take a pause here. All right, I've got a little flat head. Can we go? Okay. and then we can, hopefully, I probably need to get two hands on this because I want it to stay in place to show you that you do not have to. Maybe I've got it off enough. Let's go back and forth. Probably not off all the way on the other side. So I'm going to need both hands because, again, I want the clip to stay in place because I want you to understand that you do not have to remove it. Okay, let's try to work with what the manufacturer intended. Okay, so let's take a pause, and again, hopefully I can work all of this stuff out in editing. All right, so as you can see, the clip is still in place, and I forgot that there's a of course, not only did I forget that there's an O-ring, but I forgot that there's this retaining clip that I just broke. So, you know, again, a rookie mistake on my part, but that's just part of the perils in trying to do a video by yourself with one hand. So we've got our hose off, and as you can see, just like I said, we at least got enough of the coolant to where it's not funneling out of the thermostat hose, but it's not low enough to where when we actually remove the thermostat itself, it's still going to, we're still going to get some coolant to come out. And I already have the catch pan, as you can see. I'm not sure. Yeah, I've got the catch pan still situated, you know, with where I believe. And as it turns out, it may be a good idea to just go ahead and remove that that rear dust cover. But that's light stuff for now. What we need to do is we need to try to focus on what else do we need to remove to get this thermostat to come out, because again, it's not just the thermostat, but if I'm not mistaken, well, here. All right, so use your new part as a study guide, okay? And as you can see, which is why I know it's the thermostat, is because, like I said, it's monitored by the computer. There's a sensor in it, okay? So it's not just enough. Let's put this away. It's not enough to just expose the thermostat and remove it. There's a connector that we have to get to as well. All right. What's the course? I'm still upset about breaking my dang on clip there, but I don't know what we're talking about. Maybe $5 or $10 for that thing. So it's not the end of the world, but I don't like making the rookie mistake like that. All right. So like I said, we probably still need to remove the rear dust cover, because when we finally remove this thermostat, we're still going to get coolant to flow out. And as you can see, the engine block, it's going to come out of the engine block. All right. So it's going to flow down directly on the front of the engine block, and that rear dust cover is in the way, which means the dust cover is going to catch most of the fluid. So it's just better to go ahead and remove that. Okay, so I'm going through the process. Whereas I said I wanted to try to move some parts to make it more visual, as it turns out, even though I've got the bolt out, and this isn't out of frustration because I can get this out, but it's really just not necessary. So I think, well, let me not say it's not necessary, based on a little bit more of evaluation. I don't think that there's a need to remove the pump. I think we'll have the clearance to get the thermostat out once I remove the belt. Okay, but I've got it staged. I'm going to do this in stages because I can't see. And again, I'm trying not to work with one hand, but as you can see, I have the ratchet position on the belt tensioner, okay? And there is a way that you remove the tension on the tensioner, and it's not from the pulley, okay? Additionally, I have essentially found the source of my oil leak, and I kind of already knew or at least had a general idea of what it is. It's the oil cooler housing or the filter cooling housing. Chances are the gasket has failed, or either my O-ring on the cap has failed. I don't think that's the case as far as the O-ring is concerned. One, need a new cap to begin with. I just don't like the condition of this one. But the reason I'm saying it's not the O-ring on the cap is because there's no seepage coming out here. But this is a common, I don't want to say a failure point, but for lack of a better word, the gasket has failed. So that's where our oil leak is coming from. So we know kind of what we have to do here on the next go around. That'll be the next video. Again, not that there's not other videos around, and it doesn't have to do with the car itself. It's the engine. Keep in mind that most manufacturers will use a particular engine in many types of their vehicles. Okay, so whereas you may have a GLK350 and let's say a E350, it's the same engine. Doesn't matter what the car is. Okay, or the platform of which the engine is in. So like I said, I'm going to do this in stages because you want to get on. Let me take this ratchet off. Like I said, where you take or where you relieve the tension on the tensioner itself, it's not from the pulley. Rather, under this belt is what would be considered a bolt head, okay? But it's part of the tensioner itself, and it's a 17 millimeter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the belt, and as you can see, I've made my little diagram, and just so very rudimentary, okay? But if I can, I don't think I can get them both in the same frame. But as you can see, I just started drawing my circles, in a relative circles, i.e. the representation of the pulleys, okay? And then, I ran the belt or drew the belt in accordance to, the routing. So again, it's very rudimentary, but it will help you get the belt back in its, or good Lord, I don't know why I'm having an issue speaking. It'll help you get the belt back on correctly. All right, let me take a break. Let's get the belt off. But I also want to show you, which is why I'm doing this in stages, that there is a retention hole, H-O-L-E, and you can put an Allen, or I'm going to use, or maybe attempt to use a straight pick, because I can't find any of my dang on Allen wrenches. So I just want to let you see that we can leave the tensioner in its quote unquote open position, right? So that we won't have to fuss with it. But let's put it this way. Those holes are designed for you to put a pick in. It stays so that while you're routing the belt, you don't have to have, somebody come hold the tensioner while you get the belt back in its proper place. Essentially, you can do it, by yourself by putting a pick in those holes, keeping that tensioner open. All right, let's get to it. Okay, let me give you a visualization, because apparently the car wants to make me a liar, but hopefully some of my, more experienced DIYers can vouch for me that I am not crazy. So this is the tensioner, okay? What I mean by tensioner, obviously it moves and it's under tension, okay? There are some tensioners that are designed, and if you can see, you've got kind of marks here, but again, that's neither here nor there. My point is, this tension only goes so far, okay? So, and now it's stopped, okay? And on some tensioners, you have since this is more exposed, let's say there was, let me get a pick. Let's say there was a hole here. And once you get this tensioner to its, maximum point to where it stops, let's say there's another hole there. And this hole would then line up with that hole. You would put in basically a pick, or like I said, an Allen, very small Allen wrench. And then it keeps this tensioner open. Okay, I'm not crazy. Now, unless I'm missing something, this doesn't, and I'm not saying that it's going to be here. It could be on the other side. It's wherever, they designed it to be. But the point is, you'd be able to slip something in there, and then it's going to hold its position to make it easier to get the belt routed. All right. This doesn't have it. It's not that big of a deal. All right. Here's what's going to happen. Okay. As best as I can see, this pulley needs to come off. Okay, so we're just going to remove this little bolt here, and then that'll give me the ability to get my fingers on on the sensor clip. Okay, so that I can get that removed, and then it will also expose. Okay, the bottom bolt, and then I should be able to get with an extension. Okay, so when I come back, the pulley will be removed. Okay, what I was getting at is I do have a very small flathead screwdriver, but I just can't put my hands on it right now. But you can see I've got a little, let me get my fingers out of the way, an L-shaped clip or an L-shaped pick here. Okay, so what I'm saying about this sensor and this retaining clip is you just want to get enough pressure on to break it open, and I don't mean break it, but to release it. So let me change my phraseology there. To release it, and then you would then use it to press in. So press in, and then the connector comes off. I can't do that one-handed. So when we come back, the pulley will be gone and the connector will be disconnected. That will expose our bottom bolt there. Okay. Then we'll come up top to get this bolt, which I will just essentially, I'll position the ratchet, but what'll give me the clearance is if I just very gently, but with, good Lord, it's an oxymoron, right? Gently, but with, some force, I'll just lift up on this pump. That'll give me enough clearance to get the ratchet or the extension, the ratchet extension, and the torque socket on that bolt. And then effectively, our thermostat should be released. All right. Let's get that light out of your face. What I'm finding, this is kind of a note. This is a note of recognition. I'm still no good singularly. I need a partner. I need a videographer. I need somebody behind the camera, because as I'm working through this, I'm finding that again my instruction or my intent, it's not flowing the way I want it to flow. So let me acknowledge that this is going to be a process for me, and a thorough attempt to improve. So I don't like working by myself. I need somebody behind the camera. I want to show bolts coming apart. It helps me to concentrate knowing that I've got somebody behind the camera who can do what they do, so that I can do what I do. And that's to get a message across. That's to get instruction across. So I want to show stuff coming off in real time. So that's just an acknowledgement of, kind of um, um, a self review, if you will. But let me flip the camera, and as I'm talking, I want to show you um, what I'm referring to when I say torques. Sorry about the hand. So you have sockets here, okay? Let's get this. Okay, you've got sockets. All right, they're meant to do the same thing, but you have different forms of head patterns. All right, so and I'm going to let me state why I'm mentioning this. In some instances, and this may work here, for example's sake. Okay. In some instances, a regular, 6, 8, or a pointed or a hex type socket may work, i.e. this is what, a 10 millimeter, 5/16. And forgive me, I can't do conversions very well. And again, that's where our, trained technicians come in. They know what a 5/16 is in the equivalent of millimeters. Okay. But chances are this is a 10 millimeter hex head, and it's very firmly on there. Okay. But it's really not quite the right tool for the job. Okay. You can see, there we go. You can see the pattern there compared to this, star or Torx. Whereas this Torx socket is it's designed, it fits exactly on here. So point being, okay, if this is what you have to work with, then you have to work with what you have. Okay. We are, again, we're at home working with what we have. Again, if we're talking to our newbies, let me flip. If we're talking, to our newbies, maybe you don't have a tool set, and part of your endeavor of working on your own car. Okay, well, I would do it, and I don't know what tools to buy or so forth and so on. Well, you've got this is kind of my go-to basic toolkit. It's got some sockets. It came with a ratchet. I've got some deep sockets. We've got some shallow ones. So you can go and purchase yourself a basic toolkit. But in that, again, and especially if you're on European cars, Audi, Volkswagen, more than likely, Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, you want to also get yourself a decent set of Torx sockets as well. So I wanted to point that out. Not only do you have, let's say, positive or raised Torx screws or bolts, but you can have negative or recessed, in which case you need Torx bits, which is Torx bit. So there you go. See that? Designed to go, fits the tool. Okay. A regular Allen wrench or an Allen type of it's not a Torx, a Allen type of socket could possibly strip that bolt out. Same thing with your traditional socket. Okay. In some instances, just because it feels like it fits doesn't necessarily mean that it can't slip off, strip the head. All right. So the message there is a long-winded way of saying have the right tool as best as you can afford and as best as, you know, as your knowledge increases. Let me flip myself back. Having the right tool in many instances will make your life a hell of a lot simpler and worry-free. Okay. I have the pulley off. Okay. Here's our connector. Now I'm going to get that socket drop down. Get that socket drop down there. It's not a big deal. I can get it. I'm going to get the bottom bolt off of the thermostat, and then, like I said, we'll get the top bolt off. So actually, I'm going to take a quick pause. I'm going to get the camera in the tripod, and I'm going to make the attempt to run the video while I'm taking off the thermostat. So again, trial and error when you're working by yourself. And let me also say, you know, hats off to you guys that can do these one-handed, you know, camera in one hand and pulling apart in the other. I just don't have the knack for it because it's just doesn't work for me. Works for you, absolutely great. Kudos, no problems at all. It's just not for me. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, since we just got off the subject of, you know, having the right tools, another good tool to have is an extendable magnet. Okay, this is what I consider my little workhorse. But here's what I mean: extendable. Okay, you are bound to drop anything, whether it's a socket, whether it's an extension, whether it's the again the socket that I just dropped, you know, down in that hole that I showed you. You know, having a magnet, it's a lifesaver. You've got several types. So you got some that can angle. You have some that are on flashlights, and the flashlight extends. There's several types. You've got some where, you know, the magnet is bigger. Obviously, it's a little more powerful in what it can pick up. So invest yourself in an extendable magnet. I'm going to keep the camera rolling. I'm going to keep the camera rolling. And let's just see how this turns out. I think I've got it positioned. Sorry. Yeah, you should get the gist because I've shown where those bolts are. So I think I may have too much extension on my ratchet, but no, it's just the right amount. So I have the wrong Torx. I think that is and your Torx are going to be so let's say in your regular sockets where it may be 8mm, 6mm, if it's metric, if it's standard, your 5/16, your good Lord, I can't even, but you get it, your fractions. Your Torx bits are going to be T, obviously T for Torx, and then it'll be like T30 or T16 or T10 or again kind of the equivalent of a 10mm bolt, right? T10. You get the picture. So let's see this. Oh, I had the right one. I'm just on the wrong bolt. Where are you, little buddy? There you are. So no, I've got just the right amount of extension. But what I don't like is my hose that's in the way. So, no problem. And I promise you, I do have the ability to work a little bit more cleanly. Again, I don't like being by myself. So let's move our hose, and what this part is the crossover that comes from the reservoir, the coolant reservoir. I'm just moving that out of the way. Okay. Now, I can get on that bolt. Again, we're working from the bottom to the top. And I should have this released enough to where I can finish it out by hand. And the reason I want to finish it out by hand is because I want to feel when it's just about to come out. Then I can put my index finger on and not lose it as it comes out. Okay, I'm going to place that on top of the computer there. Now hopefully you can see. Let's see. Okay, now I'm going for the top. So again, I'm going to raise up the pump, get the bit on there, then I can bring in my my ratchet, and I can run out the top bolt. Now, since I have you guys in the tripod, in this particular application, because we have the dustpans off below, if this bolt fell, it wouldn't be, again, that big a deal, because it's almost 100% chance that the bolt's going to land either in the catch pan or it's going to land on the floor. Okay, but in the same fashion, I think I have it loose enough to where I can finish it out by hand. Okay, and then I can get my finger on, pull it out. Okay, again, we're talking, to our newbies. So in some instances, on some part, actually, let's do it this way, because on the air pump, I've got two different lengths of bolts. Okay, and in some instances it's for a reason. Okay, this longer bolt, where it goes back in, could potentially be holding something else, right? So it's long for a reason. So the point is, where bolts come out, where screws come out, that's where they go back. Pay attention to the lengths. All right. And if you have, and this is what I was getting at, in some instances, you can actually put your screws or your bolts back in where, so if we were to take this air pump off, I could put this, I could put this bolt back in this hole. Okay. I could put this lower bolt back in its hole. Then when it's time to put the part back on, I don't have to worry about where the bolts or where the screws are. They're in their living space. I'll put these back later. Okay. Now, in theory, again, we should be able to just pull this thermostat, and we may have to get a little persuader. All right. So let's try a little small pry tool. Don't make me out to be a fool. There we go. And boom. And that's perfect. Let's empty. Okay. So let's look at this. Nothing's wrong. Okay, let me bring you over. Let me flip the camera, do a little repositioning, get the light out of your face. Sorry for the hand. Okay. So, here is our failed thermostat. It's served its lifespan, and you can see we've got deformity of, you know, some of the rubber here, like it's almost like a chiffon type of formation. It's actually disintegrated in some parts. Same thing on this inner part, where as you can see, the new, it's nice and flat. I wanted to see if I could show where it may be open, but I don't think I can show that. Neither here nor there. Now, one thing that is concerning me, this is going to test my integrity, because we want to do things right, and I'm going to keep recording and just talking through. But one of the things that's concerning me is in how this thing failed. Okay. As we've discovered, okay, we've got some missing rubber here. Okay. The coolant system is a closed system. It's circulating, right? So it circulates through the engine block. Again, if we open or if we turn on our heating, HVAC, you know, inside the car, it'll flow through the heater core. But it doesn't matter where the flow is. The flow, it's a circulating system, okay? And so it's not, well, it is important, because the cooling jackets around the cylinders, the water pump, where is where is this rubber? Okay, chances are it's somewhere in the block. The point is, this really, and this is going to be for acknowledgement, because what I don't want to do is lose whatever credibility, you know, I may have for, you know, as far as a complete stranger is concerned. But again, I don't want to present anything that I'm not. I want to try to be as trustworthy as possible. So what this really calls for is a coolant flush. Okay. That's probably going to be the best and really the only way, without tearing the damn engine apart, to find the little rubber piece. Now, am I going to flush the coolant? No, I am not going to flush the coolant. Several reasons, not going into it. So I've addressed the concern, and it is a concern. But if you actually look at, you know, how thin, even though it's fanned, and chances are the piece that's missing is also fanned as well. Okay. But the chances of it actually blocking something, in my opinion, is probably pretty slim. Okay. So it is a major concern. I don't want it in the engine block. But the fact of the matter is, one, I don't have the time. Okay. And where it is a concern, I'm just going to take the chance and putting on the new thermostat. And I'm just going to keep it. But I want to fully acknowledge that the coolant really needs to be drained. Okay. And the system should be flushed out to try to get that rubber piece out. Now, chances are that it could possibly be in the catch pan. Okay. And I'll figure out a way to sift through the debris to see if it's in there. So I just wanted to make, the acknowledgement so that I don't embarrass myself with, again, our more experienced DIYers. And I please don't take my body language as insulting. Um, um, so let's keep going. Uh, Actually, let's get this out of the way. Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, we really should be working with, some sort of protective handwear, coolant. It's not necessarily caustic, but it's certainly not healthy. That's for sure. I, don't, I didn't realize I didn't have any more gloves until I actually started doing the work. So, I just wanted to, keep the safety portion acknowledged. Let's talk coolant. As we go and refill what we lost, um, it is important that you use the prescribed coolant based on what the manufacturer suggests. Okay. Um, uh, Even if you've never turned a wrench, if you have a basic understanding of how an engine works or what coolant is used for, the tradition was, the 50-50 green stuff and call it a day. Um, no, not for, well, let's say we have, specifications by the manufacturer. And here's why. Not only everything has gotten more advanced, from fluids to spark plugs to computers to this to that. That also includes metal. Okay, um, um, most engine blocks are going to be aluminum, but you can have different types of metallurgy, if you will, and the way that these blocks react to certain coolants. You can't just go and put any type of coolant in. So, again, I'm trying to talk through the process, but the gist of it is there are applications where you have coolant specific engines. And essentially what that's doing is they've designed the engine based on the makeup of the alloy, okay, and how the coolant interacts with that particular metal. So if we went and put green stuff in, or orange stuff, there's purple stuff, there's blue stuff, which we have, we could possibly be leaving deposits behind. That coolant could be degrading or interacting with that metal as it flows through the engine block, and it's not designed to work with it, so it may start to crystallize or however it reacts, it's leaving deposits in the engine. So if you understand what I'm trying to convey, even though you could possibly have the green stuff advertising mixes with, okay, well, if that's what you have to work with, that's what you have to work with. However, because again, these coolants, as they are specific, a little bit more expensive than the green stuff. What we have, I think, was at least from where I purchased, 32 bucks. And I've got two. I don't need two. But point being, you know, let's say $20, and that I don't know exact price, but let's say 20 bucks for the green stuff compared to well, hell, that's a $12 difference. You know, here it is. I've just flushed my coolant system, and I need three gallons of this stuff. Well, and 12, 24, what, 48, 36. You know, that's a significant difference between you know, the green stuff and the more expensive. But do you want to take the chance in potentially causing more problems for your engine? So you know, those few dollars that you saved by going the non-specific manufacturer's suggestion based on what you should have used, well, you just cost yourself more money. So what were those few dollars really that worth, you know, worth the savings? Probably not. So again, a long-winded way of me saying use the specific coolant, but I'm trying to explain why. All right, let's get the new thermostat in place. Essentially, we're just gonna button up the engine, go in reverse, put everything back, get the system filled, and then on this particular car, the bleeding process is in the reservoir itself. We don't have an actual bleeder screw, and I'm about 100%. Let's just say 98, 95. But again, I've replaced the radiator. I've done enough work on the thing. The bleeding process is in the reservoir itself. So we get the engine started. It'll come up to operating temperature. And what I mean by bleeding is, since we've, this is the better. Let me turn on my light. Okay. As I explained, the coolant system, it's a closed system. Okay. Since we've removed the thermostat, we've now introduced air into the engine block. Okay. Once we put everything back together, we fill our reservoir back. It's only going, let me rephrase that. We've introduced air into the block. We've got to get that air out. An air pocket will still, will cause the car to run hot. Okay. So as the coolant circulates through and comes through the reservoir, the air will release. Okay. And then we'll see the bubbles popping up and so forth and so on. The coolant level in the reservoir will then drop. Then we'll add more fluid. If anything, we want to get the car up to operating temperature so that we can turn on the heater inside on high and then at its hottest temperature. Once the thermostat opens, again, that'll allow the coolant to flow through the heater core, making sure that we're getting coolant throughout the entire system to get the air out. All right, so that's the bleeding process. If I am wrong, then again, somebody please chime in, correct me. You know, I'm not being braggadocious. I don't think I'm wrong. Otherwise, when I replaced the radiator, this car would have been running hot, and I never would have known what was going on. But if I'm wrong, again, please feel free, comment below. But as far as I'm concerned, that's the bleeding process. There's no bleeder screw. It's just in the reservoir. Once we get the reservoir to its fill level and it remains there, then we're done. Okay. So I'm going to pause. Actually, well, yeah, I'm going to pause. I'm going to reposition the camera, and then I am going to try to put the vehicle back together in just a take. And again, hopefully I can fix this with my younger brother's help on the editing side. So let's pause, I'll reposition, and then we'll get back to work. All right, here we go. We're going to make the attempt to just keep this rolling. So I'm going to position the thermostat back in its housing, or in where it lives. Okay. So one, let's look at the gasket. Okay. So your thermostat should come with the gasket already on. And as you can see, the thermostat or the gasket kind of has a couple of teeth. It's just simply made to hold it in place. Okay. To make it easier for it to, stay seated. All right. And then once you put your bolt through, actually, sorry, I didn't see the other two. So it has teeth on both sides. All right. So that holds it in place. What I want to point out is our clip. As you can see, again, it's designed to stay in place. If you take this completely off, it's just going to be difficult. So here's how this works. All right. That O-ring it's not bad, but it could stand to be replaced. So hopefully, okay. So when let me get this positioned correctly. All right, so it's going in about like that. So when this hose goes back in, and as you can see, it's got, kind of a raised area there and a detention there. So it will locate itself. When it goes back in, okay, then you push the clip in, and then where it's holding itself in place, you can see, make sure, okay, yeah, you see the little open line there. Okay. See, on the inside, when the hose goes back in, then the clip comes down. There we go. And it positions itself on that. There's an open line on this side, and then there's one on the other side. The clip goes down, secures it. Okay. All right. So what I'm doing is where's my little pick? Good Lord. All right. Well, as it turns out, I don't need the pick. All right. So what I've done is I've opened the clip. All right. I'm preparing, making it easier for me to get the hose back on. All right. So the clip is open. I have secured the gasket. It goes in like that. Okay. Alrighty. I'm going to grab my extension. I'm going to get my top bolt started. Uh-oh, let me get my light. There we go. All right, get my top bolt started. I'm not going to run it in all the way yet, okay? I'm going to get, where are you? There you are. All right, and get my bottom bolt started. Now, give you a rule of thumb here, because, and I'm not going to try to get myself in a frame. You want to start your bolts by hand, okay? And obviously what I mean is I'm not going to put my ratchet on there and then just start running the bolt in. What we don't want to do is strip out any bolts. But specifically, who cares about the bolt? It's the threads on the block itself. We strip the threads on the block, well, we've got some problems, all right? Because now we've got to potentially, you know, try to create new threads, or again, we could go into, you know, a whole litany of the problems it can create. But you want to start your bolts by hand, okay? And in this particular instance, since I can't necessarily see on the bottom, I just kind of have to feel. Now that I have that said, I have a general idea, because I can feel that the bolt went into its hole. So here, I'll look over the camera. Okay, here's one of the practices that I use when I'm putting bolts back in, okay? So the universal rule is righty tighty. So righty is tightening a bolt, or clockwise is tightening a bolt, counterclockwise or lefty loosey. Lefty is loosening the bolt, okay? If you can see at the very top, the bolt itself, or the screw, it has a starting point, and effectively, you know, it's a screw, right? Okay, so the threads go in a spiraling sort of way. One of the ways to help ensure that you're not stripping, or that the bolt is going in straight, again, as we're starting it by hand, what I do is I slowly turn the bolt counterclockwise. And as I'm doing that, obviously it's working against the thread pattern of the hole that it's going in. So in the same manner that the threads on the bolt has a starting point, so does it on the hole that it's going to. As we slowly back its way out, it's kind of like a ramp. It's going to slowly rise, but when the starting points of the hole and the bolt or screw start to match up, it's going to drop. You're going to feel, in some instances, you can actually hear it if you're listening for it. So backing it off to begin with, when it finally meets its starting point and it drops, then I know that the starting points on the screw or bolt and the hole that it's going to have matched up, and then I can start working it in clockwise, and it's gonna just go as smooth as butter. Okay, that's been my experience, and that's the way I start all of my bolts, whether it's spark plugs, you know, big humongous bolts, screws, whatever. I back it out. I let the starting points meet of the male and female, then I go in. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I only put the top one in to get it started. And let's just keep going with that theory. If you feel some resistance, stop. Take the screw out and then start over, hopefully with that process. Let me back it out, find get it to where they made up, then turn the screw in. Again, in many instances, and especially if you've been taking care of your vehicle, the screw or the bolt, it probably didn't come out with any resistance. Once you started running it out, it came right out. That's the way it should go back in. If you feel resistance, chances are it's not lined up. Something's wrong. All right. The second you feel, let me not go that far.
because there's other, you could have thread lock on, so forth and so on. But hopefully you get the gist of what I'm saying. All right, let's. Okay. And then that thought process kind of also helps in perspectives where, again, you can't necessarily see underneath. You have to feel. So where you think you might be turning your bolt or screw in and it's just continuing to turn, and then 17 minutes later you find yourself still turning, wondering what the hell is going on. Well, chances are you weren't in the hole to begin with. So that's another, helpful hint for turning the bolt back. And in every aspect, you should feel that little, where the ramping stops and then it kind of drops back down. Then you know you're in the hole. Alrighty, so I've gone as far as I can go there. I probably got a little bit overzealous with the explanation of, if you feel some resistance, stop, take the bolt back out. So don't. Okay, we're good. All right, now I've run that one in as far as I want to, and I understand that I just stopped in mid thought process on my, let's do this, on where I was going. So the point is, don't let me get you too worked up about okay. So let's keep that in. Don't let me get you too worked up in getting maybe paranoid. Oh, I feel some resistance. Again, if you've done that process and it's going in smoothly, I mean, chances are, it's just gotten tightened enough to where you don't have the hand strength to turn it anymore. But if you've started in relatively smoothly, chances are your threads are lined up. Go ahead and get your socket on, or your ratchet on, and then cinch it down. I haven't cinched it down completely on the bottom because I want to try to run. I don't want it to be, let me make sure. Okay. I don't want the bolts to be, all the way in. I want to get one started, get it maybe halfway in, come back to the top, get it. So basically we want to get them going in evenly. All right. So I'm coming back up top, following my principle. I just heard my little snap. As you can see, I'm going in smoothly by finger, right? Okay, I've gone about as much as I can. Put my ratchet on. And this is where I could really use some dang on power tools. I've been screaming about power tools. But again, we work with what we have. But I tell you, man, an electric wrench would be great. All right, so I haven't completely cinched it down, but I've got it enough. So I'm going to go back to the bottom. Okay, and then come back up to the top. That bottom bolt is seated. All right, no problem. Bottom boat is seated. All right. There we go. And top boat is seated. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to step away just momentarily. And I've stepped away to grab said torque wrench. All right. You have some people out who are I'm not going to say that word. the German N word, who are Torx files, right? And to a degree, I am one of those, anal guys. But in this particular instant, one, I haven't looked up the torque specs. I'm not claiming that I have a feel, but you can get a general idea of the amount of torque that was on a boat based on the effort it took to get out. All right. There was not a lot of effort needed to get these boats to crack loose. All right. And then in general, torque specs on a thermostat are important. The reason why they're important is because it's a leak point. All right. Let's just say, obviously, if we just put the bolts in to where they just gave enough resistance to cause one to think, okay, it's on there. Well, not only is our coolant system an enclosed system, it's also a pressurized system. So whereas you think you may have that bolt on there tight enough, once the pressure builds up, it could be just enough to back that, or not back it off, but push that thermostat out, based on the play that it has between the bolt and the front head, right? Or the front of the thermostat plate, and now you're leaking coolant. Okay. So again, I haven't looked up the torque specs, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my torque wrench to about blah blah blah. That's 15. That's 20. And since I have, well, you can't necessarily see, and that could be a video in itself, how to use a torque wrench. But in this instant, one, you don't necessarily have to see it, but you could just get, I've got a foot-pounds torque wrench. Okay. Then you have inch pounds. Then you have Newton meters. You have some torque wrenches that have those settings, those settings. Then you have electronic torque wrenches. This one is set in foot pounds. Okay. Inch pounds, you pretty much want an inch pound torque wrench. Newton meters, you can convert to foot pounds. So let's say, like on the next application, the S550 that I'm going to be working on, the spark plugs have to be torqued to, I think it's 23 Newton meters, which is the equivalent of about 17 point something. So essentially about 18 foot pounds, because it's 17.6 foot pounds. So again, you can convert your Newton meters. But what I'm going to do, well, actually, let me finish. You've got foot pounds, and then here are the numbers. You've got this is your odd on this side, and it starts at 5 foot-pounds. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, you get the gist. Then on this dial here, as you can see, you've got 0 through 1. Those represents your, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so forth and so on, okay? So as we turn our dial, I'm going up to 20. Actually, I'm sorry, yeah. So that's 20 there. So I'm just gonna go to about 23. I'm gonna lock my torque wrench down. Okay. We're going to, actually let's, and the point is, and I may, get some flack again from potential, again, more experienced DIYers, or maybe there's some professional technicians out there. So again, I have fully acknowledged that I have not looked up the torque specs for the bolts on the thermostat for this particular engine. But again, it didn't take a whole lot to get the bolts out to begin with. So what we don't want is, we don't want to just guess, okay, with our traditional ratchet, and we just continue to crank down. Okay, I can't turn it anymore, because now you're running the risk of crushing the gasket to the point that it's not effective anymore, okay? And you can still cause a leak. Or you can continue to crank down to where you've put so much torque and force on the bolt that you may snap it. Now you've got a busted bolt lodged in your engine block. Now you got to drill that out, and you got to go through the whole process of getting that. Try not to keep going, because again, I recognize I can ramble. But I believe 23 foot-pounds is going to be enough to evenly have the bolts cinched down, so that we've got a decent, I'm using the word decent very loosely, but that we've got a decent amount of pressure on the gasket. It's not going to leak, but we haven't put so much that we're running the risk of doing more damage. So boom. You should have heard the click, okay? When you hear the click, that's it. No more, okay? You'll have some guys that'll hear the click, and then they'll go back and, well, chances are you're putting more torque on the application that has been properly torqued, all right? So it's turn, when you hear the click, it's torqued. That's enough. All right, let's go to the bottom. And click. That's it. Thermostat is torqued. All right, now let's get our connector back on, and why not? Let's inspect. The sheathing is still intact. I don't feel any potential cracking of the wires themselves. If I had some electric connector cleaner, I could potentially clean it off, but it looks pretty good to me. So we've got our connector put in, but that's not enough. Let's see if I can point. Okay, so remember, we've got our clip that we had to gently pry up. Now we want to secure it by pushing it down or pushing it in. Okay, hopefully you heard the click. All right. While I'm in here, I'm taking note of what I may potentially have to do to fix this oil leak. So I'm not going to point them out because, again, it's neither here nor there, but what I am seeing is 1, 2, 3, 3 bolts on the bottom. The thermostat is going to have to come back off because we've got a bolt here. That looks to be about it. So the repair on this leaking oil filter housing seems to be pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm just making a mental note, you know, for the next video, because that has to be replaced. Again, I've put enough effort and care into this engine that I can't have that. So moving on. All right. Now, keep in mind, we do not have to remove the air pump to replace the thermostat. Again, my purpose for wanting to remove it was to make this repair more visible. So, what we had was our longer bolt up top, shorter one at the bottom. I need my Torx bit. Here we go. Put that back on, and in the same fashion that I mentioned, I'm going to start in reverse. All right. I could literally not only see it ramping back, but I could see it actually seat itself once the two starting points met up. Okay, I've got that one in as far as I want to go, because again, even though this is just going into a bracket, I still want the screws going in evenly as possible. And hopefully you can kind of see that even though I'm rambling, my workflow is better when I can concentrate on doing my intended job. So again, torque specs, it's not just, because again, those were more than likely, you know, torque, probably at inch pounds. Torque specs on this doesn't matter, okay? It's tight enough. It doesn't need to be, you know, completely cinched down with a lot of force. Here's what I did. Once it seated, I just gave it a little turn, because it's going in a bracket. Let's reduce some of our extension size and then run in our bottom. Okay, all right, I felt it seat, and then just another little quarter turn. That's done. As you can see, we've got an open in here. That's where the hose goes, but the hose goes in on the box. So that'll be one of the last things we do. All right. Let's talk it through too. Okay, I got my connector. That's very important. Okay, so if we forget something, we at least maybe want it to be what might be considered an insignificant bolt compared to forgetting to plug in the connector. Because once we put this pulley back on, put the belt on, put the thing back together, chances of you getting your fingers in there to get the connector back on when you go and start the car and your check engine light is still on and you're wondering what the hell. Now you're in panic mode. You can't think straight. Um, and then when you find, oh shit, oh shucks, I'll edit out the vulgarity. Oh crap, I left the connector on. Now I got to take all this stuff apart just to put the connector on. Talk yourself through, okay? While you've got it apart, don't be in a rush. All right. Okay. I can feel this by hand, and I've got enough space, so I don't need to start it with the actual socket. Run it back clockwise. There. I heard the little click. The two meeting points have met up. Okay, then we can get our proper Torx socket. Get that on there and finish it. Again, actually, let's do it this way. I think. There we go. Okay, now we can finish it with the ratchet. Okay, it has met its, there, okay, I'm going to consider, now, it's met its seating point. I'm going to go just another quarter turn. I'm going to call it a day. I would say torque setting kind of is important here, but I've got smooth rolling on my pulley. I'm confident that this bolt is not going to back itself out. So, okay. And as I'm talking through, I'm going through the process again of trying to talk to our novices, our potential newbies. I'm not in a rush. I'm talking myself through, okay, what else did I potentially have disassembled or taken off, okay? So I'm feeling pretty good, okay? It's not time to put this hose on. We need to put our belt on. Okay. The belt that I am cringing that I have to put back on. But again, I know that I'm going to address this very soon. So, we've got our little diagram in front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start down here at the harmonic balancer pulley, okay? And I'll go this way. So we go over this one. Now, let me start down here at the alternator. Okay. So we went here, here, back around, down to the, that's probably, got the AC compressor, then to the power steering. Come on. All right. Power steering. Then it went. Oh, good Lord. Let me start over. Let me start over. Now, I'm not confused, but you can see the importance of making your little diagram. Do not guess. Over. Get out of there. Get in there. Come on. Get in there. Okay. Then, down. Then. Let's get you out of here. Come out of here. Then, over. Okay. Then, all right, now, this is where it would be great if we had that hole, because this is where it becomes easier to route the belt if I were able to lock the tensioner in the open position. So, no big deal. We come back with our socket. We get a little bit of extension on our ratchet. We come down here. Let's get you positioned first. Okay. Now, we do not have the clearance to get on the alternator, right? So we come down here. Put some more extension on our ratchet. So I have an adjustable handle socket wrench, or good lord, ratchet. And I can open that. We go around the alternator. And then we put the tension back on. Now, it's not enough. We need to get our belt lined up as best and in the middle of that tensioner pulley as possible. And given that we pretty much have a failed belt to begin with, I'm not going to say that it's not important, but the idea is you want to visually good lord, locate. You want to visually locate the ribs on your belt in accordance to the grooves on any given pulley. Okay. Now, chances are, when you start the engine, the centrifugal force is going to correct itself. So you can eyeball your belt, you know, is evenly spaced on your tensioner pulley, but when the engine starts, it's going to work itself out. But you want the groove, you want to visually, you know, make sure that your ribs are in line with the grooves on the pulleys. Okay. And to the best of my eyesight, I'm pretty comfortable with that. All right. So we've got our belt routed correctly. Okay. Now, I am certain, okay, I don't have any more bolts. So we have locked down our thermostat. We have our belt, our serpentine belt, back in place. I put the bolts back for the pump that didn't have to come off to begin with. That's pretty much it. Okay. Now I need to open my clip back up on the thermostat. Okay, it's open. You can see. Let's see. Yep. Okay, hopefully you can see that. All right, we will line up our hose. We will work it in. I've heard it and I felt it seat. Then we can put our clip. All right, now watch. It does not, and you don't want to, go pulling on the damn thing. But what I'm doing is I'm applying just enough pressure to make sure that this hose is seated and locked in, and it is, okay? So our clip has been returned properly. Now we're gonna route our crossover hose back to the reservoir. Let's open the clip here. Okay, clip is back in place. All right, now, what does that leave us with? That leaves us with, okay, and again, you don't break yours, all right, but this would have been underneath here, and it would have attached itself right there, the hanger, okay, and that's just to keep this. So let's see if I can do anything with this at all. And effectively, I cannot. So here's what I'm going to do. There's a reason they put that there. So until I source a new hanger, to my vets, you know the drill. We're gonna go with a trusty old wire tie, zip tie, because we have a hole here. So I'm just gonna go underneath, run that through. Now, am I going to put so much, force on this that I'm gonna crimp the hose? Absolutely not. There, that's enough. I just want it to secure itself. Okay, we'll cut the excess off. So you can see, all right. So it's being supported. All right. We can at least put our hose back, and then when we put the air box back on, this will just rotate in place. Okay. Now, so this statement, go back to the beginning when we removed the drain plug. Once the coolant basically goes to a trickle, put the drain plug back in. That way, you didn't forget it. However, you'd be remiss to not know that you didn't put the drain plug back in when you go and put coolant in the reservoir, because it's just going to go through the doggone system and come right back out on the floor. All right, but when the coolant goes to a trickle, put the drain plug back in. I've already done that. Okay. All right, so the dust covers are going to be the last thing we do. All right, so and why is that? Because if we did miss something and we go and put everything back together and we find that there's a leak, we're just going to have to take it off anyways. All right, makes sense? Okay, so I'm just going to review one more time. Okay, good. Thermostat's good. The clip, the sensor clip, the sensor connector, good. Our belt is good. Putting coolant in. All right. So, if you went to the dealership, Mercedes-Benz dealership, you're going to see, you know, the same bottle, but you're going to see a different label. All right. And this could be Mercedes, Nissan, Infiniti, Lexus, whatever manufacturer. If you go to the dealership, you're going again to see that, but you're going to see a different label. You may see, you know, Mercedes-Benz coolant, whatever the case may be. Mercedes-Benz oil, 5W30, 0W40, so forth and so on. Mercedes, Nissan, all of the they're not in the oil refinery business. Okay, they don't make oil. They don't make spark plugs. They've sourced a vendor, okay, and that vendor has made a product per the manufacturer's specification. All right, and so I just wanted to put that out there. Don't get too hung up in, well, if it doesn't have the OEM's name on the bottle, well, then it's inferior. That's not the case at all. We can go into that a different video. I mean, I've got tons of content I could create. All right, but as you can see, I just want to point out. Make sure. Okay, peak original equipment, European vehicles. Silicon enhanced hybrid organic acid technology for use in Audi, BMW, Dodge, Fiat, Jaguar, Land Rover, hey, Mercedes-Benz, pre-2014. Don't get so caught up in it. Again, if you've got, you know, 2015 and beyond, it's very simple. Just open up your doggone reservoir, see what color you have, or more importantly, open your friggin' owner's manual. There's a wealth of information in your owner's manual, okay, that gives you guidance on what to use. All right, enough of that. But I just wanted you to see that we've got Mercedes-Benz, good Lord, the word will come to me. Let me keep working. Let's see if I can, what if my fingers weren't so freaking dirty. Oh, here. Okay, blue. But it's also denoted by the label itself, okay? It's blue, and of course it says blue. The purple stuff, it'll have a purple label, but it'll also say purple, okay? So, I'm going to forego the funnel. We're going to fill this as far as we can go, just so we get coolant back in the system, even though there's still plenty of coolant in the block. I should have had the camera over here, but you can actually hear the coolant going through and the air coming out. Okay, so let's give that a second to work its way down. Okay, gravity is helping us. I can literally see the coolant going down. All right. And hopefully I haven't talked myself into a bit of overconfidence when I said earlier that, well, I won't need 2 quarts. 2 quarts. I won't need 2 gallons. I'm already at a gallon now. But I think I'm going to be good. Okay. All right. I haven't filled it to the brim, okay, but I've got it to a level that I'm comfortable with. So, you know what? I know I'm probably breaking the rule, but I'm going to leave the cap off, okay? Get our little crappy mixture, because we're done with that. That's in the trash. Let's bring our air box back over. Oof. And in fact, where I'm going to end this video is up top. There's no point of me going back underneath, you know, video and me putting the freaking dust covers back on. So let's get our air box in place. And actually, let me show you. Here's what I mean. Okay, here are the C clips that I was referring to, and hopefully, let me turn my little spotlight on my nice little forehead lamp that I am increasingly beginning to like. Oh, good Lord. Okay, here we go. So let's see here. Am I in the... Hopefully you can see. But here's one of the rubber grommets. Here's the front. Okay, and then you got it on the other side as well. So that's what those little C-clamps attach to. So you use your computer as the guide. There we go. Okay. Use the computer as the guide. And then we just push down. And then we put our, there we go. So if your retaining clip in the rear isn't going on, the airbox is not seated. Okay, so you just push down in each of your corners, and then over the good Lord, the throttle intake inlet, if you will, push down there. All right, now we've got our air box in place. I can reconnect my hose from the air pump, secondary air pump. Come on. Okay, and this will ensure, even though I know we're not going to get any codes, but one, I don't want crap going into the engine being sucked in to the throttle body. But just again, just ensures that we don't get any codes. Okay, so I am ready to start the car. I'm gonna let the garage up so we can get the exhaust going out. And again, I'm just hunting and making sure that I haven't forgotten anything. All right, so let's start the car. All right, I'm gonna speak up. So as you can see, I started the car without the cap on the radiator or on the coolant reservoir. You know, it didn't come spouting out. Okay, so don't run the risk, but that's another reason why I didn't, again, you know, fill it to the brim. So as it starts circulating through the engine block, you know, obviously it's going to mix with it's going to mix with what was in there to begin with. And so it may raise, but as it continues to circulate, it's just going, that the level is going to go down. All right. And here's the other reason that I'm starting the car without the cap on. Obviously, as we need the car to get to operating temperature so that we can, again, turn the heat on, get the coolant going through the entire system. But there's also obviously a danger aspect associated. Once the pressure builds up, the last thing you want to do obviously is remove the radiator cap. It can be done, but I'm definitely not going to put that on the video, as it is a safety hazard. So I'm going to go with what I believe to be the reasonable option, which is why I started the car. I'm going to let it warm up with the cap off. Once we see the temperature start to raise on the gauge inside, so there's two ways we could monitor this. I could actually connect my scan tool and read the engine temperature from there. I'm not going to go that route. Not everyone has a scan tool. Again, it's not to say that mine is better than anyone else's, but for what I believe the average person that has a scan tool, what they do have, I'm going to say that mine is a little bit more sophisticated than that. So again, and that's another whole can of worms. Let's work with what we have. And I'm going to assume that you don't have a scan tool. We'll use the temperature gauge on the inside of the car, or on the instrument cluster. So this is going to run, for a few minutes. And in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and pause the video. And when I come back, the temperature will have gotten to, the operating, or the engine will have warmed up, the gauge will have moved, then I'll turn on the heat, and we'll continue to look for air pockets or air bubbles coming out of the reservoir. We'll also look for fluid level to drop. That should be the expectation. And then we'll continue to fill until we get to the fill line. And then actually, let me also explain another reason for bleeding the coolant system. One, if you've got air pockets in, you have the chance of your engine running hot, okay? But also, if you have air pockets in, chances are you're not going to have heat inside either, okay? So, pausing, and then we'll come back. All right, we're back momentarily. Oh Lord, I put my dirty fingers on the seat. No problem, that's clean. But here's what I mean, okay? So, on our temperature gauge, okay, we've got some movement. That's what we're looking for. All right, we've got some movement there, meaning we've got enough temperature that in theory should cause the thermostat to open when we do this. Put our blower on high, and we want both of our zones to their hottest, okay? And this is also another way to, I guess, maybe kind of confirm that you have at least some semblance of properly bleeding your coolant system. Because again, if you have air pockets in, you're not going to get heat, okay? So right now, the air is blowing cool, all right? And in theory, we've got enough temperature there that we should be getting heat. So we're still blowing cool, but with the heater running now, that should now cause the coolant to, work its way through the entire cooling passage or the routing. So we're going to go back outside. Oof. And we're also keeping an eye on our temperature gauge, because again, another way to see if we have a problem is, again, our gauge will continue to rise and rise and rise and rise and rise. So let's go back in the tripod. Let's see if we can, you can see, I have seen some decrease in the level of the coolant. So again, we're just going to continue to let this run, and I'm going to keep an eye on this and watch for bubbles coming out. So again, no reason to keep you. I will start the video when we've got some success on heat inside, and then filling our reservoir to the proper fill line as it continues as the coolant continues to circulate through the system and work the air out. All right, I'm back with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to help our circulation along. As you can see, we're idling at about 600 RPM. Okay, I'm just going to give the accelerator just a little bit of, I just want to speed up the water pump some to help the coolant circulate. I still have cool air coming through, okay? But as I'm helping the water pump circulate the coolant, I've gone from cool air now to warm air. Go up a little bit more at 1,000. Now I've gone from warm air to hot air. Okay, so again, I'm just helping the coolant go through a little bit faster just by giving it a little bit of throttle. Again, even at 1,000, I'm fine. So nothing crazy. And while I'm in here, as it turns out, I'm going to do it. Okay. So I have to show the scan tool, because one, as you can see, we've got the check engine light on, and the only way to clear that is with the scan tool. But I also need to see if in fact the thermostat is reading correctly. And so again, this may be, some of the daunting part of making the decision to work on the vehicle, or even thinking, okay, well, hell, it's just the thermostat, I'll just go in and replace it. Well, again, that's not it. Okay, you're not done by just replacing the thermostat, bleeding the system. You still have an issue. You got to clear the doggone, you got to clear the code out of there, right? Okay, let's take a peek underneath. Make sure our, which is why we left it off to begin with. Okay, make sure we don't have anything leaking out of the plug. Let's actually come over to the plug. Okay, can I see? Yes, I can see. There's the plug. Actually, let's do this. Let's make sure we're okay. Dry that off. We don't see anything, weeping out, slowly trickle. There's nothing. So our plug is secure. All right. There we go. Let's get some more coolant in the reservoir. Actually, let's do this. So in this particular incident, it would probably be helpful if I did have someone to at least keep an eye on the reservoir itself to kind of give me, you know, a verbalization. Hey, you know, take your foot off the gas. It's starting to overflow. But what I've done is I've filled it up to, I don't want to bring the camera. You have the cap line, and then you have, you know, the very first line, if you will, of the reservoir, and that's where I have it filled to. So I'm going to go back inside, do the same thing I just did. I'm going to help the coolant along some. Okay. That's okay. I'll bring the camera with me. Here's what I'm saying. I filled the coolant to, I filled the coolant to this bottom line, okay? I filled it there. When I went in to help it along with the accelerator, the coolant has dropped. So it was here, now it's down there, okay? So that helps me decipher that coolant is working its way through, and in theory has also, as it's worked its way through, has pushed air bubbles out of the reservoir, okay? So what am I going to do? I'm going to do the same thing. And actually, let me go back. Okay, and now I have a constant, actually, now I have a constant stream of hot air without the help of the accelerator. So that's another indicator that we are bleeding the system properly, okay? I think I still have enough. And quite honestly, at this point, to where you know what? I thought we had a fill line on the reservoir, but as you can see, let's try to angle this. Essentially, from, let me use my pick. Okay. From where we can see the coolant is if the coolant were lower, we would actually see the colored portion of this light plastic. We'd be able to see that on the inside, okay? So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to, again, give it a little bit of acceleration, okay? And let's see how much the coolant level drops. I'm of the opinion that it's not going to drop because we have replaced the coolant, the amount of coolant that we lost when we pulled the drain plug, okay? But let's see how it works out. I'll put you guys back in the tripod. I will keep rolling with the intent that whatever I need to edit will be edited. Get that out of the way. Okay. Additionally, I've been keeping an eye on the temperature gauge, and we are at the correct operating temperature. It hasn't gone anywhere near, you know, the hot line. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, I'm going to bring you guys back over. Come on. Alrighty. I'm going to take our overhead light and okay, so one, you can see steam now coming out of the reservoir again on our what I consider to be final attempt at helping the water pump speed up to push air out, coolant through. I said that if the coolant dropped, we should be able to see the difference between the plastic colors, right? And that's not the case, okay? So not only is the coolant holding its level, but we can also see it circulating, okay? So I'm just going to let that run for just another few seconds. Okay, I'm going to continue looking for bubbles potentially coming through. But as far as I'm concerned, the bleeding job is done. Okay. Again, I've got a constant stream of hot air coming through the ventilation system, and I have the temperature gauge exactly where it needs to be. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to get the scan tool connected now, and then I'll just do a little recording of clearing the code and then reading the data stream on what the scan tool is reading the engine temperature or the coolant temperature. So let's pause, and I'll come back with the scan tool already prepped. Well, I figured, what the hell, it's the potential to be edited. So some people, get a kick out of seeing details. Some people don't. Some people just want to, hey, just show me how to fix this damn thing so I can get on my way. But hopefully that'll capture enough. Let's turn down I'm running a Think Tool Pro. In fact, let me just make sure that it's in the frame. Okay. Guess we can zoom in some, right? That's good enough for the intent. Okay. So no attempt at a shameless plug, but just in case, because I'm pretty sure I'll probably get some questions. But I'm running a Think Tool Pro. I've had this for what I guess maybe going on 2 years now. It could possibly be even 3. But I'm a little bit behind the power curve because my subscription on the updating has expired. And one, it's not the most intuitive on finding a vendor, or basically it's not that intuitive on how you go about renewing the subscription. But we're talking, anywhere from $300 to $500. So it's just not in the budget right now. So this is not a plug for a Think Tool. Of when I had, or when I was prepped to make the purchase, this is what I deem to be, the application that I figured would, work for me. And it has worked for me so far. So again, this isn't about a scan tool review, but I'm just asking, or I'm answering the potential question of, those that might be interested. Well, what are you using? It's a Think Tool Pro, pros and cons. Let's just leave it there. Diagnosis. But my software definitely needs to be, I need to be upgraded just to stay current, with the features that they add, and as they get a hold to what manufacturers have made changes with, and at least what they will allow access to. Because again, this is not a dealer grade scan tool, but it is definitely better than some of the handhelds out there. It's bi-directional, which isn't the only reason that makes it better. But let's go to health. Yes, it'll run its scan. So far I only have one engine code, okay, which should be the thermostat. And now that I've turned off, so actually, let's make sure. So I've turned off the heating system, period, and will continue keeping an eye on the temperature gauge just to see if it's going to run hot. I've got a tire pressure monitoring or TPMS code. The rear TPMS has basically the battery has burned out on it, and the tires are still in great condition, so I'm not about to pull, you know, one tire just to replace one dang on TPMS. And notice I'm saying TPMS and not TPMS sensor. TPMS stands for tire pressure monitoring sensor. It's not a tire pressure monitoring sensor. So it's just TPMS, and that, again, that's me being anal. While we're waiting for this to finish up, you know, one thing that was definitely evident from that Range Rover series of videos is it is not easy making a video, you know, and especially when you're working on your own. So you know, again, just like I gave, you know, you know, an accolade to the guys that can, you know, film with one hand and turn a wrench with the other, at least for what is shown. You know, again, hats off, but you know, understand, you know, for you all that are watching, it takes a lot, you know, to put, not just even to make a crappy video. It takes a lot. So, you know, again, you know, hopefully I can get some extra help and, you know, bring my content in a more streamlined and flowing. But let's keep going. So this is the only thing we're concerned with. Let's go into that. Let's go into that module. Let's read the fault code. Okay, the coolant temperature is below the coolant thermostat specified temperature. How do we know that? Because again, that thermostat is monitored. We saw it because there's a connector that goes to it. All right. So we still have the same code, right? Nothing new has popped up. So we're going to clear that. Okay. Hopefully, I'm not going to get out and check, but hopefully we can see. All right. Our check engine light has been cleared. Now let's go into the data stream. Let us give me a second here. Let's go into test values, and then we want coolant temperature. Okay. Our coolant temperature on our scan tool is reading about 93 degrees. On the temperature gauge itself, if we were to say that 80, 90, let's say the tick marks are in increments of 5, so 80, 85, 90, and then it's just off center of 90, which would indicate about 91. We're reading 91, and I could go into the actual specifications, but it just wasted some video time. But again, more than likely, I'll cut this. This is for my own purpose. But I could have sworn that our new thermostat had the operating temperature that thermostat was rated at. But again, for us Mercedes-Benz owners, that needle is where it's supposed to be. And so I think we're at 100 degrees on the operating or the thermostat rating, or maybe 95 degrees. Either way, it's fine. So that is the point. All right, let's take you guys, but I'm not going to take you out of the tripod. What I'm going to do is come back over here. Let's get our light back. Okay. Let's just go through the buttoning up process. Okay. So we've got, thanks. All right. So we already have an air box on. We will put the front clip back on. Followed by our intake tubes. Go back underneath. Put our rear dust cover on. Put our front dust cover. Actually, the front dust cover, then the rear dust cover. Put our little rubber. It's not a grommet, but. Oh, good Lord. I know what it's called. It just won't come out of our mouth. We'll put this back in place. And then job is finished. So that's the thermostat on the 2010 GLK350. But you know what? Since we're at it, because I know I'm going to anticipate the question. All right. So we just talked through buttoning the car back up. All right. So let's call the job done. All right. Let me flip myself around. Okay. Now I can talk to you, because again, I'm going to make the attempt of answering a potential additional question that may come through. So, close the garage. Shut the car down and operator's manual. Okay. Like I said, I'm not telling you to sit down and read this thing front to back. Okay, this is just at this point now, a professional, good Lord, a professional suggestion. Okay, there are people, obviously, who have this job to write manuals, okay, or to let's leave it simple. There are people's jobs. There are people who have jobs specifically to write manuals, whether it's lawnmowers, riding tractors, cars, motorcycles, snowmobiles, side by sides. If people
they write these manuals. They didn't just come from thin air. Okay. Um, there's a wealth of knowledge in these manuals. Okay. Again, some manufacturers are more specific than others. It's been a while. Okay. But if I find the section in here, um, then I'm going to make potentially a pretty valid, but just to keep myself safe, a pretty valid, but I'll say a relatively blanket statement. All right, so give me a second. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and pause. And when I find what I believe is in here, then I'll come back. Okay, so didn't take long, but I found what I was looking for. So, and again, the intent is to answer the potential question that I think I'm going to get. Uh, hey, Julian, or however you're going to address me. Hey, is this process the same on XXX? Okay. Don't ask yourself, or don't form your question in that mentality. Again, go back to what I was saying earlier. Okay. It's not about the package. Okay. It's the engine that's the question. Okay. So if you go to your owner's manual, and I'll figure out, in editing, let's see if this may need to go at the beginning or wherever it needs to go. But again, if you go to your owner's manual, and specifically for Mercedes-Benz, all right, I don't know about other manufacturers. I've got an Infiniti outside, and I'll be honest, I've looked at it, but I haven't looked at it to the extent that I've looked at Mercedes-Benz. One reason, that's the first Infiniti I've ever owned. It's a Q56. And in comparison, again, I'm not bragging, but throughout the vehicles that I've owned more Mercedes-Benz than any other brand. I've had two GL450s, the GLK350, the E550. I had two 560 SELs, two 500, no, sorry, two 560 SELs, two 560 SECs, a 500 SL or SL 500, and I'm sure I'm missing one or two here or there, but I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry, the 560s and the 560 SEC and the 560 SEL, those were 80s and 90s. So again, I've gone from 80s all the way up to about 2012, 2013. I don't know when they started doing it, okay? But for the longest, in their owner's manual, okay, they have listed their engine type. So this is, and chances are you're going to precede that number with an M. So this is an M272 engine. And then the chassis is the 229. Okay. And again, if I'm wrong, please forgive me. But right now, we're only concerned with the engine. So don't ask me if this will work on your particular year and then your class of Mercedes. You'll have the answer. Just go to your owner's manual. Okay. Chances are, if you're, anywhere in the 2000s, just start from the very back. Okay. And then work your way forward. You can see I'm just 3 pages in. Okay. And that's where we'll find what engine type we have according to Mercedes-Benz nomenclature. We have an M272 engine. Okay, so don't ask if this will work on your particular car. Go to your owner's manual. If you have an M272 engine, yes, this is the process that you want to go through. Okay. Um, Now, where I will make the caveat in the potential um, is the 8 cylinder. Okay. The 8 cylinder, say from, or let's say from, I want to say maybe 2010 through 2013 or 14. And I'm going from my GL450. The exact same engine, okay, but it was a V8, so it just had 2 more cylinders. The layout is practically the same. Um, so now the V8, it's going to be a different. It may be a 273 or a two. I forget what the engine type was. It's been a while since I've had the GL450, but you see where the thermostat is. If you have the 8 cylinder version of this 6 cylinder, it's going to be practically the same engine. Okay. Again, it's just 2 more cylinders added on. For the purpose of the thermostat question, will this work on my 8 cylinder? All you have to do is locate the thermostat. It should be in pretty much the same place. All right. And then you'll have your answer. Okay. But for the 6 cylinder, let's answer that question. For the 6 cylinder, the M272 engine, yes, it's the same process. All right. Okay, again, additional information just for the purpose of trying to be as thorough as possible, and again to acknowledge. So again, if you recall, and you can't help but to recall, you watched the video. We also identified that our serpentine belt was crap, and I explained that that would have been part of this process, but by the time I noticed it, based on what I had going on, even though at that time the part stores were open, I didn't have time to get there. So I said that I'd have it replaced within a couple of days. No, it will be replaced today. So just as soon as I finish the S550, I will have to test drive that. And so my test drive will be to the auto parts store to pick up the serpentine belt. There should be no reason for me to have to make a video on how to export to replace the serpentine belt, because part of the process of the thermostat was removing the serpentine belt. Just go and wherever that lands in the time frame, just jump ahead, look at that video. Even if it'll be kind of hard to find all the right keywords, but again, for the purpose of changing the serpentine belt, removing and reinstalling, it's in the video. But I wanted to acknowledge that it will not be a couple of days before I replace the serpentine belt. It will be today. So or essentially, to make it flow, it's the next day after I've made the content, and it's being replaced the next day. All right, so it's not lingering. Done. Alrighty, we got more footage. We're still on the GLK, so we're not done yet. But again, hopefully we can fix this in editing. So go back to, I'm sorry, let me put this back in the tripod. Okay, so, excuse me. Go back to the section when I showed you the failed thermostat compared to the new. And remember, we had those two circular rubber gaskets, if you will, that were kind of fanned out, and then pieces were actually missing. And I acknowledged that ultimately we really should flush the coolant system out. But then there was also the thought process, again, we have to try to think about any possibility. Well, in draining the coolant, there was a possibility that, you know, those rubber pieces could have come out. Well, and I should have, but I already threw some out because I was a little bit questionable whether or not I was going to add the content, because again, I've already got about 3 hours worth of footage here. But to turn it around, this is really me trying to save face again with my more experienced guys. But while you're doing coolant, and especially if you've actually done some work where you've had to change coolant, and your coolant at that point was new, well, you can salvage it. Okay, so the way you do that is starting with a clean container. So first of all, none of this debris was in the engine block. Okay, so that's first. All right, I had no intention of trying to save the coolant to begin with, which is why, as you can see, I had 2 new gallons. All right, but that's not the point. The point is, where are we? Here we go. See that? That's some of that rubber gasket. Now, I found a few other pieces, but I chumped them, okay? But I figured I would leave that just to show you that our gasket, or that failed portion, sorry, it did come out with that initial coolant drain from the lower radiator plug. All right, so no need to drain the system, and that's, again, this is more of kind of the troubleshooting. All right, if you find that you're missing pieces, well, when you're done draining your coolant, pull out your coolant, pull out your catch pan and see if they're in there. Okay, and again, the chances of those pieces mucking something up or causing something to fail, which or potentially blocking a passage, a coolant jacket passage, or maybe, you know, interfering with the water pump itself, pretty slim. I mean, it's already pliable anyway, but you don't want it in there. It wasn't designed to have foreign debris in there, so you don't want it in there. But it did come out, so make sure you don't have any floating pieces, or check to see if you do have any floating pieces. And if I don't find anything else, that's the end. Guess who's back? All right, continuation with the GLK, because we still have a potential problem. It's not necessarily a problem, but it is a environmental safety concern. So you may have asked yourself, again, to our newbies, or, you know, even to maybe some of our experienced folks, you know, I'm certainly not a tree humper. I don't mean any disrespect, but I do what I can, you know, not to contribute, especially to, you know, environmental concerns when it comes to automotive fluids, i.e. oil, but in this case, coolant. All right, so let me take you guys out of that, because we have an issue. We've got some coolant here, right? You certainly don't want to hold on. It's not a memento. It's nothing to save. Again, if you did not salvage yours with a clean container, all right, again, I had no intention of trying to salvage this fluid. I'm not saying it wasn't a big deal. That's not the point. The point is, what do we do with this now? Okay. First of all, I suggest that you save the container, okay, that it originally came in, or if you have the ability to purchase, say, a sealed catch pan, i.e. something like what I have over there. That's for my oil changes. You can see I have it standing up. I don't have any oil because it's a very nice container and it works very well. Okay, so maybe you don't want to use that for oil. Maybe you want to use that for coolant. Okay, so point being, you want to find something that you can transport this coolant in to where it's not open, sloshing around in your vehicle. Okay, then you can, let me flip myself back around here, and maybe you can put the steps together however you want. So you can venture out again, check with your main auto parts stores, the big names, right? And just ask the personnel, hey, because I'm with the let me just, with the exception of O'Reilly, I don't think, or I don't know if they take recycled oil. Okay, but Advanced and AutoZone, they do. Okay, so I have more experience with AutoZone, so let's just go with AutoZone. AutoZone will take the used oil. Okay, some AutoZones have a limit, right? At least on the amount or the frequency. So maybe you can only, dump once a day, or hey, we're only taking, 10 quarts. I think that oil, the oil pan that, or the oil catch pan that I showed, I think that's like 32 quart. It can hold quite a lot. One, I never let it get to the point to where it's full because it's heavy as crap. Okay. So right now there's probably an oil change in there. There's probably only 10 quarts in there. So I try not to stay my, plus I want them to take my oil, but point being, they will take the oil. Okay. Very few take coolant. Okay. And what they do is they send that oil off, and it's recycled. So I said recycled, used oil versus you taking your used oil to them to recycle. That's what I'm trying to say. So you can go and visit your auto parts stores. Hey, do you take coolant? Okay. No, we don't take coolant. You got any place that you could recommend where I could, discard this used coolant? Go to X, Y, and Z. Okay. So they'll possibly be able to refer you. If they can't refer you, then maybe you might venture to what seems to be, pretty reputable independent mechanics. Okay. I can almost safely assume that no dealership is going to take anything from you. So don't bother yourself with dealerships. See if you can, very nicely, hey, I do a little bit of work on my car, just did some coolant. Is it possible you'll take my coolant, either, for free, or, can I give you 10 or 15 bucks for taking my coolant? All right. So there are ways to dispose of coolant. If not, then you can actually call your county landfill. Okay. And ask if they have recommendations. Hey, where can I take some used automotive coolant to, be recycled? All right. So you have avenues to get rid of this coolant safely. A point being, please don't go and dump the crap in your backyard. It's just going to get into the ground table, and if animals get to it, it's got a sweet sort of smell. The animals will be killing animals, so forth and so on. It's just not responsible. Okay, that's the gist. Go through every effort to find the proper way to dispose of your coolant. Okay, and I've just given you some pathways to do so. I'll be back, or I won't. Let's call it even on the GLK. All right, we got more GLK footage. This is for the purpose of the dust cover installation. It's important because, again, we're talking to our very new DIYer. Okay, so let me add a little bit of light for reinstalling the dust cover. Okay, let me flip. Sorry. Reinstalling the dust cover. Okay. First, like I said, you want to put in the front one. Good Lord, come on, light.
There we go. You want to put the front one in first, okay, followed by the rear, okay. You line up your holes, and then as you can see, I start the screws, but I don't run them in all the way. That gives me the opportunity to, move it around, line the screws up. But the biggest thing that I wanted to show you is that once you get all your screws into their locations, okay, when you go and tighten the screw, okay, once it seats, you can just do, the slightest bit of turn, and that's it. All right. You do not need to, just crank down on it. One, it's going in, or it's going through a little metal clip, but again, you can put so much torque or force on these screws that you can, snap, or at least strip out that metal C clip that the screw is going through. So these are not going to vibrate out. Okay, so you seat it, just a little cinch, and then move on to the next one. We want to keep the dust cover intact. I can't stand seeing vehicles that don't have their dust covers anymore.
There's more potential for videos on the GLK. No intention of selling or trading it in. Like the vehicle, it's a good, workhorse. Still travels very well. So there's no need to, or really any desire to get rid of it. So, if some 500,000 miles, later, we're still making videos, then that's what we'll be doing. So that's the end for the GLK. I'm going to, again, put it back together and get it off the ramps, and then we'll start on the 2016 S550. So I'll get that prepped, and then that'll be the next video. So I'm kind of recording back-to-back work. All right. Again, let me get out of here with another sip of coffee, and I'll see you guys on the next video.